Okay, welcome to this video. I'm going to be looking at negative fractions. Um, so by this stage, you've probably already had a look at negative numbers, or negative integers at least, whole numbers. So in this video, I'm going to look at applying some of those same addition and subtraction methods that we use for whole numbers and for multiplication and division as well. But I'm going to do that using fractions. In this first little example, I'm asked here just to arrange the numbers from smallest to largest. So what I'm going to do here to help visualize how we can see which one's smallest to largest, I've actually drawn a little number line underneath, and you'll see it starts from -6 and I go up to +7 in this one, just for the sake of this example. If you have a look at the numbers here, you'll see why I've chosen that range of numbers on the number line. So when you come across a question like this, or you're asked to arrange some numbers and you've got fractions, what you might want to have a look at, obviously these ones, they're fairly straightforward because they're already converted into mixed numbers, which is going to make it fairly straightforward to arrange them. If you're working with, say, some improper fractions or proper fractions, you might like to perhaps get the same denominator. So you can do that by creating equivalent fractions. I definitely recommend that if you're looking at a couple of fractions and you're not actually sure, you can't say with confidence which would be larger than the other. So it's always a really good practice to convert them into equivalent fractions rather than, say, just guessing. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab a pen, maybe a different color as well, and I'm just going to mark on my number line that I drew where these numbers fall. So for example, -1 and 2/3. Here's -1 here, but I need to go 2/3 of the way towards -2. So there's my -1 and 2/3. I'm going to write it down so then I'll have the numbers in order once I do that. 6 and 2/5, so I need to go all the way up here, it's positive, and 2/5 is going to be about here, 6 and 2/5. Next one is -1, well that's nice and straightforward, and -3 as well. +5 1/4, we go back up this end here, so 1/4 of the way towards 6. -4 1/2, so -4 all the way down here and half of the way towards -5. And then my last one is +5. So all the way up here, there it is. So my final order then, smallest numbers are the ones furthest left on my number line. So -4 1/2 is the smallest number in that list, followed by -3, -1 and 2/3, followed by -1. And then I get to my positive numbers. So I've got 5, 5 1/4, and finally 6 and 2/5. So sometimes imagining them on, or even drawing it if you need to, a number line is helpful in these particular cases. And like I said, if you aren't sure, if you are working with some proper fractions, say, just convert so that you have the same denominator, create an equivalent fraction, so you have the same denominator, and then it's much easier to compare the size of your numbers. Okay, so what I wanted to look at mostly was operations on negative fractions. So we'll start off looking at some addition and some subtraction. And just as a bit of a review of negative numbers, of operations on negative numbers, the key one that I see students having trouble with is the addition and the subtraction of negatives. So one thing I wanted to just remind you of is here I've got a number line again. Positive numbers over here on the right hand side and negative over there on the left. So if I am, say, adding a positive number, it makes sense that that number then is going to get bigger. And so I'm going to be moving towards the right-hand side of my number line. Same if still working with a positive number. If I'm subtracting a positive, the number is going to get smaller. So I'm going to move to the left of the number line. Now, where there's confusion is when we start doing this with negatives. So if I actually add a negative number, so I'm adding a negative, and you'll see that I'm going to do that in a moment with some examples. It's actually the equivalent of subtracting the opposite of that number. And so adding a negative means I'm actually going to move to the left of a number line. And the opposite of that is subtracting a negative. And subtracting a negative is actually the same as adding the opposite of that negative number. So we actually move to the right of the number line. So if you need to have a number line with you when you first start off, just to remind yourself of this so you can visualize it, then by all means. But what I do, as you'll see, is I just rewrite the problem if need be, which I'm going to do with some of them. First of all, start off nice and easy. I've got here -6 and I'm taking away a third. I'm just going to switch colour, go with this blue one. Okay, so you're at -6, you're taking away a positive number, so you're actually just going to move left. And I'm just going to draw you a little picture here. I'm at -6 and I'm taking away a third. So I'm going to move left. I'm taking away a third, so I'm just going to end up here. Say -7 was there. Oops, that's meant to be a 7. I'm taking away a third. So I'm actually just moving a third to the left on the number line. So I'm just going to have -6 and a third. So I don't really need to do any additional calculations there. You can, if you need to, say could convert this number here to have a denominator of 3. So that would be -18 on 3. And I'm taking away 1 on 3. So that would give me -19. It's -18 and you're taking away 1, so you're going further negative. And of course that is -6 and 1/3. So you'll see I get the same result. Now I don't want to be drawing a number line all the time, of course. I'm just doing that at the moment to help you see where I'm getting these numbers from. With this one here, see how I am taking away a negative number. So you'll see that it's been put in a bracket here because it's fairly good practice to put your negative numbers in a bracket, especially when you're substituting, when you're doing some algebraic substitution later on. It's good to get a negative into a bracket. But it's also just helpful because you're not going to then get, say, your operations sort of merging together and it's hard to see your negative. You might miss the negative in those cases. When we're taking away a negative number, it's actually the equivalent of adding the opposite of that number. So taking away -4.5 is the same as adding 4.5. And so here I could just add the whole numbers together, 4 and 4, and then add the half as well. So I get 8.5 for that one. Moving on to something a little bit different. Here I've actually got 2 mixed numbers and you'll see the fractions here have different denominators. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to convert these. I'm going to convert them, excuse me, so that they have the same denominator. Now you can do that after you convert them, say, to improper fractions. I could convert these to improper first, and actually I might do that actually. Or you could just convert your fraction here to have the same denominator, and then you could add from there. If I do it the first way, say I've got this negative number, I'll just leave it out the front there. 3 4s are 12, plus the 1 is 13, so I've got 13 over 4. And I'm adding, so 5 3s, 15 plus 1 is 16, 16 over 3. Now, the reason it probably would have been a good idea just to convert the little fraction here is now I need to convert these, or I need to get the same denominator. So I can times this one by 3 and that by 3. This one I'm going to have to multiply by 4 and that one by 4. So my numbers end up being a lot bigger this way. However, when you're subtracting, it's good to get them into improper first. So I quite like this method. Okay, so I've done 13 times 3, give me 39, and this is negative 39 over 12. Now obviously this one's going to be over 12 as well. I just need to do 16 times 4. So 4 by 10 is 40. 4 by 6 is 24, so that gives me 64. Oh, I'm going to run out of space here, but try and squeeze it in. Okay, so I have got negative 39 on 12, and I'm adding 64 on 12. So I might draw a little picture. Now it's not to scale, but I'm here at negative 39 and I'm adding 64. So 39 is going to get me to 0. And then I'm going further beyond 0. So obviously 64 and 12 is larger, so I'm going to get a positive answer here. And so what I need to work out is really the difference between 39 and 64, so 25. And so I should be here at positive 25. So if we add these together, so 30 and 20 is 50, 9 and 5 is 14, so we get the 64 there. So my final answer is going to be 25 over 12, or there's two 12s in 25, so 2 and 1 over 12, when I convert that back to mixed numbers. And I'll just move that out of the way because now we're on to this final one here. Okay. So I've got here two proper fractions this time. They do have different denominators, so I need to make sure that I convert or I create equivalent fractions first. And I do that obviously by creating lowest common multiple. In this case it would be 28. And so I'm just multiplying top and bottom to create that. So I've got negative 20 on the top over 28, adding 21 over 28. Okay, so just like before, I've got I'm starting off at negative 20 on 28 and I'm adding 21. So negative 20 plus 21 will bring me to 1. And that is over 28. That one's actually a little bit easier than the previous one. So there's a little bit of adding and subtracting with some negative numbers. What I'm going to do now is just a quick review of multiplying and dividing. Multiplying and dividing in a way is, I find, just a little bit easier, I guess, because one thing about multiplying and dividing with negatives is you know what sign your answer is going to be just by looking at the question. Now, you can't really do that as quickly with the adding and the subtracting. You've really got to know which number is larger than the other. Whereas with multiplying and dividing, you can just look at whether you are multiplying positive by positive, positive by negative, or negative by negative, and you'll know what your answer should look like in terms of a positive and a negative. So just as a review, you'll see that I've written that down here. The only way we can get a positive answer here is if we are multiplying together two positive numbers or two negative numbers. All other cases, we will get a negative answer. And that's, of course, if you're multiplying a positive by a negative or a negative by a positive. And these same rules actually apply for division. So I haven't written them out again for division, but I will do a little bit of division in a moment. So here's a first couple of examples where we are multiplying. And you'll see that we do have a whole number to start off with the same colour. And so you'll see I've got a positive number here, a positive multiplied by a negative. So I am going to get a negative. If you want to, you can put your whole numbers over 1. I'm going to multiply the numerators together, so 3 by negative 2, so that I've already got the negative there, so negative 6, and 1 by 5, 5. So my answer will be negative 6 over 5. You can leave it like that, or you can convert it to a mixed number if you wish. So we've got negative 1 and 1/5. Okay, so this one over here, you'll see when I multiply the numerators here, I've got a negative times a negative. So I'm going to get positive. 9 2s are 18, so positive 18, and 1 3 is 3, and 18 on 3 is 6. So positive 6. Okay, just a couple with some division now. You'll see here I've got a mixed number. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to convert that first. So 2.5 is 5 on 2. And when I'm dividing a fraction, I'm actually going to multiply by its reciprocal. I'm going to change it to multiplication and I'm going to flip the fraction. Okay, I've got a negative times a positive, so I'm going to get a negative. 6 2s are 12, so I'll write that as negative 12. And of course this is 1 times 5 is 5. And as a mixed number, we've got negative. 5 goes into 12 twice with 2 remainder. And finally, a fraction divided by a fraction, and you'll see I do have a negative here as well. So I'll keep the negative 4 on 5, and I'm going to multiply this by the reciprocal of a half, or of negative a half. Negative 4 by negative 2, negative by a negative is positive, so positive 8. And 5 by 1 is 5. As a mixed number, 5 goes into 8 once, and there's 3 remainder. Okay, hopefully you can, now that you've had a little bit of a go along with me, you'll be able to have a bit of a go with the questions that I provided to you. And please make sure that you come and see me if you do need a little bit of extra assistance with this one.